So this time we're looking at the 31 story again, and it might be a long one, so strap yourselves in. We're dealing with the Lima variety this time, and these aren't mine, by the way. These belong to a friend, and they've been on my workbench for, let's say, some time. I was given a spec for this project, and it was to originally make them look less plasticky. Add ETH cables and boxes and whatever else is necessary. This was okay, but with a budget of 0 made it a little bit difficult. So as ever, we'll start by stripping it down into its component parts, and we'll have a look at the motor for a start off. As with all things Lima and running, the key is having everything clean. That includes wheels, pickups, and motor brushes and pickups, contacts. One of the other things I was told to do was make it DCC ready as well. So I got some of these 8-pin plugs, and I had to make them removable, just in case at some other later date I wanted to put lights on. One thing that I never liked about the Lima models, apart from the motor, was the fact that all the wires seemed to just flap about in the body uncontained. So I decided to attach some plastic tubing so that they could be channeled into, well, into a neater sort of arrangement. So I like to replace all the wiring as well, just so it's all colour coordinated, like it should be really. Red and black to the power bogies, grey and orange to the motor. Stripping down, rewiring, cleaning, and then putting it all back together again only took a couple of hours, and it's fairly easy to do. I think the hardest thing is putting the wheels back in the unpowered bogie, because they seem to flop about and spring all over the place. Once everything was back together, it was time for a quick test run to make sure everything was working right on the only bit of analog track that I have on my railway. It's switchable between DCC and analog. It seems to run okay both directions, so we'll crack on with the body. And the body had a few issues for me at the beginning, because somebody decided to glue the glazing in, which, if any of you have taken a Lima engine apart, you don't need to glue the glazing in, because it's just snap fit. It wasn't my intention to repaint these, it was just the detail differences meant that one was going to look odder than the other, and I wanted them both to look the same, so I thought it would be easier just to strip the paint off. Well, most of it, because it wouldn't all come off, but what did come off was enough. And the product I used was Deluxe Materials Strip Magic. You've seen that in one of the previous videos. Out of the box, both of these models arrived with me being numbered 31402. Now, obviously I can't send them back as both 402, so one of them I was asked to turn into 408 and the other 427. Now 427 in its later years, and as the spec that I was given, had an uncommon radiator grille arrangement on one side. I might have mentioned at the beginning the budget for this was 0, so I had to delve deep into my Class 31 spares box, which is mostly Hornby, and find a radiator grille that sort of matched what is on 427. Adding the grille to the body side meant that I had to cut a chunk out of the chassis so that it would sit in the right position. One of the reasons these sat on my workbench for so long was the fact that I couldn't source headlights, and it was only a matter of weeks ago when I had a chance conversation with one of my other modelling friends and I discovered where to get them. So these headlights are from replica railways, and with a budget of £0, which I've mentioned before, I'm now out of pocket by about £1.50. And something that's innocuous as a headlight, it just would not bloody sit right, I tell you. It bounced and bobbled all over the bloody place. Eventually though, I prevailed and won the day. Next job was to cut out the cutouts for the ETH equipment, and I decided to cut all of this out and attach it all to the chassis, because I didn't want to have wires attached to the body and having to uncouple them from the chassis and stuff like that. It's an unnecessary faff if you can get away with it, and I managed to. You'll see a bit later on. There wasn't a lot of other details to add to the body, so it was then straight into the paint booth for an undercoat of blue, followed by the top coat of rail blue, which means masking, remasking, unmasking, and then remasking. Seriously, does anybody actually really enjoy masking models? Rhetorical question. I think the reveal, the unmasking, is probably the most enjoyable part, perhaps, but it's still fraught with worry, whether you've got a bleed or just the tape pulls the paint off or something, which happens to me quite often, which means touching up and respraying. Never mind, we'll just carry on. Did I mention before that I really hate painting yellow? The best paint I've ever seen laid down at yellow is Greg when he did his Chinook just recently. I'll leave a link in the description or in the corner if I remember. However, this one's turned out not too bad again, so I might be getting better at it. Both these engines were employed by Regional Railways North West on the passenger circuits in the mid-1990s. Although both escaped the Regional Railways paint scheme. 408 had somewhat of a cult following because it just was one of the loudest, best engines out there. At that time, the 31 fraternity, so to speak, named 408 the Truncheon, and eventually somebody put that name on the side. That somebody was me, and I thought I'd do this one as well. And holding proper tradition, I spelt it wrong again. I knew when I started this project that if I repainted them, I was going to have to do the orange cant rail lining, which was one of the reasons why I kept putting it off, because it's one of the things that I do not like doing. But to rub salt in the wound, I did 2 or 3 sides, and the lining just kept going all over the place and wiggly wobbly, and it took me ages and ages to get it to go right. And then the bit that I filmed went bloody straight on without any bloody kinks in it. Would you believe it? To my surprise as well, the orange stripe around the cab on the rain strip was really easy to paint on. And I'm sure some will say, Oh, you've forgotten to put some glaringly obvious detail parts on, like the reinforced Windsor surround on 427. Well, yeah, I did, but I'll argue that I wanted it to look a bit different, so did it after I did finish the painting. It's the same with the roof cowl on 408, but that's because I wasn't quite sure how to do it. And I did consider leaving the roof cowl off of 408, but because it's such a big detail part, I had to have a go. So I got a piece of styrene strip, curled it in my fingers, and then just glued it on the top. And it looks pretty good actually, so I'm quite pleased with that. Now, if any of you have got Lima 31s, then one of the most annoying things detail wise I think about them is the plastic handrails. So I then decided to upgrade them and make some of my own out of brass rod, which meant that I had to then paint them as well. With a pair of pliers, they're fairly easy to bend up, and it only took me an hour to do the 16 that I had to build for these two engines. Not wanting to throw very much away and repurposing stuff, I reused some of the plastic handrails off the Lima 31 on my next project, which is part 3 of the 21-ton mineral wagon saga. I mentioned before that I was going to put the ETH equipment on the chassis to avoid having wires between the body and the chassis. So once I'd cut out the cutout on the body and then scored a little piece on the chassis where it was going to go, and because my budget for this project is 0, I had to make my own ETH cables, sockets and receptacles. And with styrene tube it's all pretty easy. And once they were painted orange, it was just time to put the body on. And that's one thing I do like about Lima engines, it's the ease in which they go back together. Now, in my original spec for this job, I was told absolutely categorically no weathering. Well, I had to do the roof fan just to give it an outline, and then I did 2 panel lines on one of the engines as well, and it just, without it going any further, it just looked a bit harsh, so I had to stop. Overall, I've really enjoyed this project again, and given my budgetary restraints, shall we say, I hope the friend that receives them is appreciative of the work and effort that's gone into them. I'm just accumulating the parts for another Lima engine upgrade, and that project will be starting soonish, I suspect, but that will be a full hog with rewheeling, remotoring and everything else that's associated with it. Now, I was sure I had footage of me driving 31427 on a passenger train on the Crewe Liverpool line, but I can't get it because it's on VHS and I haven't got the facilities to upgrade it or download it or convert it at the moment. So I've got some footage of me driving 31421, which was another exceptionally good Northwest engine. Anyway, it's been nice talking to you again. I'll see you in the next one, which is going to be MDVs, the part 3 of the 21-ton mineral wagon saga.